Hi, it's Saturday afternoon in Winnipeg. Welcome to Radio City. Radio City's your 54-minute guide to the Manitoba entertainment scene. I'm your host, Doug Holmes. Today, a very special Remembrance Day show, one that honors all the veterans of the wars Canadians have fought in, but especially soldiers of Métis and Aboriginal heritage. Our hosts for this extraordinary hour are Ted Longbottom and his cousin Greg Pruden. Ted is a Métis Manitoban from the Scanterbury area. Greg Pruden is his co-songwriter. Together they weave tales of the Native contribution to Canada's war effort and the struggle those same soldiers had to be treated as equals both in the trenches and later at home. As well, we go back in time to before the founding of Manitoba for some stories of the battles fought by the Métis here on the Great Plains. Battles for their very survival against settlers and other Native tribes. It's quite an hour, so let's get right to it with a special Remembrance Day Radio City show called My Father's Bones, War, and the Métis Tradition.
This program is dedicated to all veterans, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal alike. Hi, I'm Ted Longbottom. My writing partner Greg Pruden and I call this collection of songs and stories My Father's Bones, in honor of the Métis and Aboriginal warriors whose examples of courage, pride, and endurance exemplify a long tradition bred in the bones of a people. A tradition that has sustained the Métis for over 200 years. These songs and stories are about the Métis experience of war. They cover a time span of more than a century and a quarter, from the Battle of Seven Oaks in 1816 to the battlefields of World War II. The first few songs and stories deal with the Métis buffalo hunting culture. These plainsmen were, by necessity, warriors. The plains were a hostile environment. The Métis had to carve by force their niche among the tribes of the northern plains, which included the powerful Lakota, or Plains Sioux.
My name is Greg Pruden. The golden age of the Métis buffalo hunting culture can be defined by three battles. Seven Oaks in 1816 marked the emergence of the Métis as a distinct and significant new people on the plains country of the Northwest. The Battle of the Grand Coteau in 1851 established the military predominance of the Métis in the northern plains, following their victory over a large force of Sioux. The Battle of Batoche signaled the end of the Métis as a significant social group in the Northwest. From this point on, the Métis would be at best marginalized in the new social order. At worst, they became outcasts in their own land. Incident at Seven Oaks, Storm on the Grand Coteau, and the Bell of Batoche chronicle these events. This song is called Incident at Seven Oaks.
Grant called for his chestnut mare as he lit his pipe to smoke. We watched the ragged farmers come from a shady grove of oaks. Semple acted like a fool when all is done and said. That summer's day in the setting sun, the governor lost his head. I saw his blue eyes open wide as if in dumb surprise. Bright blood flowed in tides from the hole between his eyes. There was Grant with 25 and more coming every minute, until we formed a deadly ring, our enemies within it. He sent a messenger to speak, he said, "Assemble, you're a liar." The governor, he drew his gun, but he had no chance to fire. "20 Métis guns rang out, the air was still and clear. And when we fell down to reload, they began to laugh and jeer. Their laughter died when we jumped up and the dead began to fall. Some fought and died, some ran away. We killed them one and all. I saw his blue eyes open wide as if in dumb surprise. Bright blood flowed in tides from the hole between his eyes. I saw his blue eyes open wide as if in dumb surprise. Bright blood flowed in tides from the hole between his eyes. Semple's men were 24 and 20 of them fell. The smoke and heat and the bloody reek made 7 Oaks a hell. And late that night by a dancing fire, old Fulton sang a song of the Bois Brûlés and victory as we laughed and sang along. I saw his blue eyes open wide as if in dumb surprise. Bright blood flowed in tides from the hole between his eyes. I see his blue eyes open wide as if in dumb surprise. Bright blood flows in tides from the hole between his eyes.
The speaker in The Hunt looks back on the vanished era of the great Métis buffalo hunts. Out of the buffalo hunt grew many of the traditions of warfare practiced by the Métis. The hunt was highly organized, with a military structure and discipline. Strict rules of travel, defense, and hunt protocol were enforced by hunt captains and backed by the threat of punishment. The Métis also possessed the individual skills needed to hunt buffalo or to wage war plain style, horsemanship, and the ability to shoot straight. These skills and tactics, coupled with courage and determination, established a reputation as a skilled and disciplined fighting force.
First thing I can remember is watching the rear end of a horse, and the way it opened up like a bright pink flower, and the plop plop of horse turds in the dust, and the warm rich odors of horse dung and grass and coming rain. The horse was big and black and bony looking, like a cow. He was pulling our noisy jolting cart through the heat and dust of a clear summer day. I was perched atop our baggage, fascinated by that horse's rear end. His name was Tunner. That's all I remember of him. The old man named all his cart horses Tunner. That means thunder in English. I think all that horse's thunder was in his rear end, though. The old man loved horses. He always kept a good buffalo runner. He would never ride his runner except in the hunt. A good runner was important. Your life depended on your buffalo horse. I think the old man treated his horses better than he treated my mother. I remember one of them, a bay stallion with 4 white socks named Jack. The old man said he was the best runner in the country. He won him on a bet from some Yankee trader down in St. Joseph's. He got stolen by a Cree brave one summer when we were traveling through the Saskatchewan country after buffalo. Boy, was he mad. The old man never had no use for Cree after that. Remember how the old man used to look for them 4 white feet whenever we met a party of Indians. But we never saw the horse again. The old man always had a good buffalo horse, though. Getting back to Tunner, I would have been 3 or 4 years old, still riding on the cart with my mother and my baby sister Nancy. We were heading south to Pembina, hunting buffalo. It was a big hunt. There were hundreds of carts. I remember the noise they made, like angry devils screeching in the summer heat, and the dust and the dogs barking, and the wind in your face. That was one of the last of the big hunts. As the Red River hunt got bigger and bigger, the buffalo got more and more scarce. To hear the old man tell it, those were the times. At night, there was fiddles and dancing and stories around the campfire. And when the buffalo were sighted, excitement would sweep the cart train. The scouts would gallop in to report the presence of the herd to the captain of the day, and the hunt captains would ride along the train organizing the men. The carts would wheel to form a circle. The women would be laughing and preparing pots and fires. The men, young and old, would hurry to gather up ammunition and mount their runners, while the children screamed and laughed in their excitement, thinking of the feast to come. I heard the old man's stories so often that I seem to remember these things as if they had happened to me, but I know that's not really true. All that I remember of that hunt was Tunner's rear end, but I can still picture in my mind Jim McKay's white ox, and the little skittish gray mare my father was riding, and how they brought Baptiste Lavallee's body back to camp after the hunt, and the camp so still you could hear the water boiling in the pots the women had going. He was 19 years old, the old man said. They found him on the ground after the run, his horse nowhere in sight. He never had a mark on him. His neck was broken, the old man said he was smiling. That may have been the old man improving things, though. I seen lots of dead guys, and they never looked like they were smiling at anything. Madame Lavallee was a widow with 4 kids, and Baptiste was the man of the family. But she did all right. The old man said she had more buffalo that year, and for as long as they lasted, than she would have had if Baptiste had lived. He never was much of a shot, according to the old man. The next song is called Storm on the Grand Coteau.
This tale was once told around the table when the prairies were buried in snow. How a Métis band faced the mighty Sioux on the slopes of the Grand Coteau. How we fought and we won in the blazing sun on the slopes of the Grand Coteau. I'm 14 years old on that long summer hunt in 1851. For 30 long days from the White Horse Plains, we followed the setting sun. The little ones grow weary, their faces thin and gray. I hear my mother's gentle voice as she turns to them to say, this trouble now will pass away, all weariness and pain. I swear by the earth and my father's bones and the red blood in my veins. We see no trace of buffalo, though our scouts roam far ahead. In a lonely valley near the house of the dog, we find the Sioux instead. The Dakota on their ponies are suddenly there on the hill. 1,000 wild warriors in feathers and paint. In my dreams I see them still. We ring our camp with rifle pits and wait with beating hearts. The women and children take shelter inside a circle of wooden cars. This trouble now will pass away, all weariness and pain. I swear by the earth and my father's bones and the red blood in my veins. The 77 boys and men, we face the mighty Sioux. They darken the slopes like buffalo. Our hunters are scattered and few. The sun is hot as a prairie fire. It burns down on friend and foe. We blaze at them with buffalo guns. They answer with rifle and bow. A musket sings and a warrior falls. So they rush us again and again. The screaming of wounded horses and the cries of dying men. This trouble now will pass away, all weariness and pain. I swear by the earth and my father's bones and the red blood in my veins. Storm clouds in the summer sky, thunder above and below. A warrior sings his death song, the wind begins to blow. After 2 long days of fire and rain, we've lost but a single soul. The Sioux dead lie thick in the bloody grass, falling like buffalo. We rise slowly from our rifle pits and bow our heads to pray. We give thanks to God for the victory He has given us this day. This trouble now will pass away, all weariness and pain. I swear by the earth and my father's bones and the red blood in my veins. Whose voice will sing the stories of deeds that burned so long ago. Only the wind that blows through the grass on the slopes of the Grand Coteau. only the echo of a summer storm on the slopes of the Grand Coteau.
Some of the stuff I got in my head. It's been so long now I don't know whether I seen it, or if it really happened, or if it's something I heard somewhere or what. Besides, I'm a pretty good liar, and sometimes I even get to believe in my own lies. But the real truth is, I seen the whole damn thing. I seen the prairie full of buffalo as far as the eye could see. Sometimes you had to wait a whole day for a herd to pass. 50 years later, you could just as easy found hair on a billiard ball and see a buffalo in Manitoba. I seen Riel too. He was something. You had to listen when he spoke. I remember freezing my arse off for hours on a cold winter day listening to him. And not just me either. There were hundreds of people there at Fort Garry, standing in the cold, listening to that voice. And nobody leaving even though it was 20 below. Of course I had a little something to keep off the cold, but I wasn't drunk. I remember it like it was yesterday. Riel going on in 2 languages, all about the rights of the sons and the daughters of the country, both the English and the French. I remember him getting in a dig at McDougall, his arsehole from Canada that was going to walk into Red River and hand it over to his friends from the east. Even the Kildona people who were Scots and distrusted Riel were laughing at the image of this Governor McDougall, disappearing into a prairie snowstorm yelling useless threats into the darkness. It was some speech. Yeah, Riel was something all right. Everyone was cheering and shooting guns into the air and singing some of Falcon's songs. And when they ran that flag up the pole, I was shouting as loud as the rest. We thought we'd won. 15 years later on the Saskatchewan, it seemed like it was all happening again. The same redcoats and surveyors, and our people under Riel again. Except this time, I couldn't believe it no more. I'd seen what they brought into Red River against Riel in 1870. When I saw the couple of hundred so-called soldiers at Dumont got together, I knew there was no chance of ever winning a war against Canada. Still, Gabriel had some good plans. Things might have turned out different if he'd had his way. I seen my old friend Donald Ross dead on the ground at Batoche. He was an old man like me, and he knew as well as I did that we couldn't win. Even if we did, what was there for an old buffalo hunter? Buffalo were gone. Riel was gone. Dumont was gone. There never was an army. Just a few old men like me and Donald and Joe Willette and some of the younger ones like Gabriel and his brothers, who had more heart than head, maybe. You know, I envy Donald. He followed the buffalo. What else is there for a hunter? This song is called The Bell of Batoche.
A river of time could never wash the blood and the tears from the Bell of Batoche. We rode in the dark to Dolaron's mill. We looked to the dead and dying. We lit no fires, there were no sounds, but young MacDonald's crying. He lay up all day in the mud. Come dusk he cried no more. The earth turned black with his dying blood. We buried him by the shore. A river of time could never wash the blood and the tears from the Bell of Batoche. A river of time could never wash the blood and the tears from the Bell of Batoche. We camped by a bluff through the second long day. We prayed that the moon wouldn't shine. You could just see your fingers in front of your face when someone shouted, "It's time." The night exploded in noise and flames. Napoleon cried, "They found us." We saw there was nowhere to run. The English were all around us. and the river of time could never wash the blood and the tears from the belle of Batoche. A river of time could never wash the blood and the tears from the belle of Batoche. They took us all to pile of bones. They gave me 7 years. They locked me in an iron cage. Alone I cried my tears, but always in my hungry dreams a meadow lark is singing. These prison walls are falling away, and a bell is sweetly ringing. And the river of time could never wash the blood and the tears from the belle of Batoche. A river of time could never wash the blood and the tears from the cloche de Batoche.
The country-born, or English-speaking Métis are historically associated with the Hudson's Bay Company. Many sons and grandsons of retired Hudson's Bay employees found service with the company as tripmen on the York boats. They, along with their Cree and Ojibwe cousins, made up the bulk of the crews that manned the York boats carrying furs and trade goods throughout the northwest for the company. How the Red River boatmen became involved in a war in Egypt is a subject of the Nile Boatmen.
Their lonely graves are scattered along the banks of the Nile River, under the harsh Egyptian sun, half a world away from their homeland. They have lain forgotten in the Egyptian sand for well over a century. Who are these 13 men, Canadians all? How did these veterans of an obscure foreign conflict come to lie so far from home, unremembered and unmourned? On November 11th, when the bugles play the last post in honor of the dead of Canada's wars, what lament will sound for them? The dead of the Somme, of Vimy Ridge, of Passchendaele, of Dieppe, of D-Day, of Caen, of Korea and Bosnia will be honored in ceremonies across Canada by the traditional 2 minutes of silent remembrance. The silence that has surrounded these 13 graves for 114 years is the silence of neglect and anonymity. Who are they? What is the mystery that lies buried with them in the Egyptian sand, hard by the brown, rushing waters of the Nile River? Strangely enough, the answer to these questions can be found right here in Manitoba. The story begins with the graves of 2 brothers that lie on the banks of another muddy river, the Red. The churchyard of St. Peter's Dynevor is scenic and peaceful. Known as the Indian Church, it was the northernmost of the 4 Anglican parishes that spread northward along the Red River from the Forks. Its history, like that of its sister churches, St. John's, St. Paul's, and St. Andrew's, is closely connected to the history of the Red River colony. To visit these churchyards is to step into Manitoba's past. The old stones that mark the resting places of the dead tell a story of fur traders and Indian chiefs, of war and disaster, of the passing of an era and the birth of a province. It was here, in the area surrounding St. Peter's, that the Saulteaux band of Peguis, friend to the Selkirk settlers, settled along the waters of the Red to farm the rich, rolling prairie land. Here it was they lived in peace and prosperity until 1907, when they were swindled out of their homeland by the shameful actions of white land speculators and politicians. Now, All that remains of the Indian settlement is the old church building and surrounding graveyard. Here may be seen the walkway from the river to the church, a reminder of the days when the river was the colony's main highway. Here lies Chief Pegwis, without whose help and friendship the Selkirk colony would have perished. Here, under peaceful Manitoba maples, lie the graves of his Saulteaux people, some honored with traditional gifts of tobacco, touching reminders that the dead are not forgotten by their descendants, scattered now among the reservations at Pegwis, Broken Head, and Roseau. It is among these graves that the first clue to the mystery of the Nile veterans may be found. The names of the two brothers were Alex and Adam Cochrane. They were among the 100 Red River men, Métis and Indian, recruited by the British Army to serve as boatmen in a relief expedition to rescue General Chinese Gordon, the governor of Sudan, whose residency at Khartoum was under siege by the followers of a charismatic leader known as the Mahdi. Ironically, the idea of using Red River tripmen to navigate the treacherous rapids of the Nile came about because Wolseley, the British officer in command of the Gordon Relief Expedition, had witnessed the skill of these boatmen, who had ferried his troops from eastern Canada to Red River to put out the flames of the Riel Rebellion in 1870. The records of the Gordon Relief Expedition tell a story of hardship, toil, and pestilence. The officer who did the actual recruiting of the Red River boatmen, Colonel William Kennedy, died of smallpox, contracted during the voyage from Canada to London, without ever seeing Egypt. The men died of smallpox and other diseases, and by drowning when their small river craft, modeled after the York boats of the fur trade, capsized in the deadly cataracts of the Nile River. The Cochrane brothers survived the trials of the campaign, which ended in failure when Gordon and his garrison were wiped out by the Mahdi's troops on January 26, 1886, 2 days before the arrival of the relief expedition. Their gravestones identify the brothers as veterans of the Nile expedition of 1885, making these men among the earliest Aboriginal veterans in Western Canada, and providing a link between the forgotten boatmen who sleep by the ancient waters of the Nile and the fur trade world of Old Red River. You're listening to a special Remembrance Day edition of Radio City on CBC Radio 1. In the 20th century, the tradition of the Métis warrior found new expression in 2 world wars and in the Korean conflict. For many Métis, the decision to join the armed forces was prompted by economic necessity. They could make more money in the army than as laborers in the civilian world. Some joined out of patriotism. Some were looking for adventure. Silent Parade and On the Wire deal with the era of the First World War. The term Silent Parade was used to describe the silent marches held by First War veterans to protest the poor wages and living conditions they returned to after the war. It is used here in a double sense, as a comment on the silence that has surrounded the story of Canada's Métis and Aboriginal veterans.
Somme battle, a huge success. British and Canadians advance. Allies win great victory. Read it all in the Manitoba Free Press. Only a nickel.
What's up? Why'd we stop?
It's the rifles! Let's go! I want to see our cousin! Phil is a corporal in the rifles already. I mean, he only joined up a few months ago. He was telling me and Stewie about all the girls he's been getting since he joined up. Look, there he is!
Wow, they sure look smart. There's so many of them. The Huns don't stand a chance.
I'm gonna join too. You're 18 now. The old lady can't stop you. Come on, John, what do you say? Let's join up together.
Well, I don't know.
You want to be stuck in dogleg your whole life? Come on, or the war'll be over. There's more to life than fishing and farming.
I don't know, Ed. What's Mom gonna say?
Come on, John.
I just don't know, Ed.
Come on, John, it'll be great. Besides, it's our duty, for king and country. Think of it, John. We'll see the world. Besides, if we don't go now, the war will end and we'll miss all the fun. You coming, John? Or do I have to go it alone? You're not going to break up a great team, are you?
Oh, okay. What do we do?
John, how you holding up?
Eddie, I can't take it no more. Honest, I gotta go home. Get me home, Eddie.
Don't worry, Johnny. I'll get you back home. Jesus, he's in worse shape than I thought. I'm going to have to watch him close. I can't let that lousy Captain Snipes brand Johnny a coward. This is all my fault. He never would have come if it weren't for me. I wish they'd attacked. I can't stand this waiting. John! John! For Christ's sakes, John, where are you? If Snipes finds him behind the lines, he'll have him charged with desertion. Johnny!
Halt! Identify yourself. Where's your rifle, soldier? Where are you going? You're a bloody deserter. Do you know what the penalty for desertion is? You disgust me. Worrying about your own worthless hide while good men are dying. Damn coward.
Johnny!
He went because they told him to, into a line of fire. He'll never answer roll again. He's face down on the wire. Though I live to 100, the memories won't fade. They're sights that I'll carry with me to my grave. Those faces so weary, so young and afraid. My comrades that march now in silent parade. He went because they told him to, into a line of fire. He'll never answer roll again. He's face down on the wire. Johnny could soldier and Johnny could shoot. Johnny could march 40 miles in his boots. A fisherman's son, he was proud of his roots. But he didn't care much for war and salutes. He went because they told him to, into a line of fire. He'll never answer roll again. He's face down on the wire. In the hour before battle, a restless wind stirs. It runs through the ranks like a shivering cur. And as the shadow of death passes over the earth, it falls on the Camerons at Bellevue Spur. The guns are now silent, the battle is past. The bodies lie broken and scattered like glass. And as Daniel John Thomas breathes his last, there are no bands playing, no flags that have mast. He went because they told him to, into a line of fire. He'll never answer roll again. He's face down on the wire. Oh, he marched to the station with rifle and pack. He's left Manitoba, he'll never be back. And she's tying his letters in a ribbon of black as the generals order another attack. He went because they told him to, into a line of fire. He'll never answer roll again. He's face down on the wire.
You're listening to a special Remembrance Day edition of Radio City on CBC Radio 1. Anyhow and red wine are tales set during World War II. Both stories underline the brutal nature of warfare and the hardening effect it had upon the participants. Many Métis veterans of these wars and of Korea never received the benefits offered to non-Aboriginal veterans of educational assistance and land. For many, the equality that they experienced for the first time in the military lasted only until they returned to civilian life. Back home, they seemed to be invisible. The contributions and sacrifices they made unrewarded or even recognized.
Most of our officers were decent types, but not all. And some of them paid the price. Oh yeah, there were officers killed by their own men. Now, you got to remember, as the war dragged on, there were a lot of conscripts in the army, draftees. A lot of these men had come out of the bush. Some of them had prison records for assault, robbery, murder even. They weren't Boy Scouts. There were a lot of guys in that bunch that wouldn't have thought twice about sticking a knife in your back if they figured you for the wrong type of person. Let me tell you, too, that a lot of so-called officers and gentlemen treated the men under their command like scum. One of them, I'll never forget this, had a dog. One of them short-legged, long-eared types with sad eyes and a drooly mouth. This officer, he was a captain, used to travel with this dog wherever he went. You always knew it was him coming because you could hear the click-click of that dog's claws coming down the hall. This Captain McNair had a Pommy accent that everyone knew was phony because one of the guys had grown up in the same town as him, some little backwater in Cape Breton. He was an absolute stickler for regulations. Everything by the book, buttons polished and your kit clean, and by God, you had bloody well better say, sir. He made the whole company stand at attention in full kit for 5 hours once because he found a French letter someone had hung over the chapel door for a joke. Anyhow, he had this bloody dog. One of his favorite punishments was making whoever was on his blacklist clean this dog's kennel. That was no joke, because the dog shit like an elephant. McNair had it arranged with the cooks, so the dog ate whatever the men got. Naturally, it had diarrhea most of the time, especially in hot weather. It made you puke just to go near the place. One day, McNair is inspecting the company, and he notices Haywood, this Indian from Prince Albert, has got a piece of tobacco on his lip. So, of course, it's kennel duty for Haywood. Now, this Haywood is one of those guys with a prison record. There's all kinds of stories about him, like how he killed some cook in a bush cap with his bare hands because this cook burnt his eggs once too often. Now, that may have been just a story, but Haywood was definitely a tough guy with a mean streak. He came back from that kennel detail with a look in his eyes that made everyone give him a wide berth. About a week later, McNair's dog goes missing. He's got details out searching the fields and bush around the camp for 2 days, but never a sign of that dog shows up. 2 months later, we were in England, some little village west of London. Not even a village, really, just a name on a railway station and a couple of houses and a post office, not even a pub. About as far into the boonies as you could get in that part of the country. When we landed in England, we figured this is it. No more of this parade ground bull. We're going to see some fighting. But it was all just more of the same, with a few extras thrown in, like running all over the country in the middle of the night with nothing but a compass and a flashlight, bumping into trees, and stepping in cow shit until it was light enough to find your way to wherever you were supposed to get to. We spent 6 months doing more or less the same thing, and everyone getting pretty fed up, and not a pub or a woman or any kind of place in sight where a guy could spend a little money. We were living in tents, the whole battalion, and it was drill all day and wander around lost all night. Finally, we get word we're moving out. Nobody is too excited about this, because it's about the 20th time we've heard this rumor. Only this time, it turns out to be true, and we get our marching orders. Everyone is real happy to be leaving, thinking any place has got to be better than this, which only goes to show how wrong you can be. Anyhow, the word is we're leaving on Friday, so Thursday night there's a giant booze-up, because even though we're in the middle of nowhere, someone's figured out how to get liquor in, and by lights out, everyone's blind as a rat, me along with the rest of them. Next morning, we're made to fall in on the parade square, the whole outfit, before breakfast even. The CO marches out in front of everybody, and we figure he's going to tell us about our orders. Turns out pretty quick, though, that the real reason is because an officer has been murdered. Guess who? A police patrol finds McNair dead in the latrine with a piece of leather wound around his neck. Naturally, there's a big stink, and all kinds of military police and officers come around and ask a lot of questions, but they never find out who did it. The general point of view is good riddance to bad rubbish. The murder and investigation caused a bit of a delay, but 6 days later we're in London, and a week after that we're in France. This was in '44, and we had our fair share of fighting in France, and later in Holland and Germany. Lots of the guys bought it in Holland. The fighting was on these dikes, in low, flat farming country, with rain all the time, and the Germans dug in pretty strong and putting up a heck of a fight. A lot of it was storming these bunkers and gun emplacements, and most of the time you'd have to do the job with just infantry and small arms. It was during the fighting for these dikes that I managed to get my arse shot up. The Germans were dug in across this causeway. The only way in was straight along the dike, because the land on both sides was flooded. It was raining and cold, just like always. I was a sergeant by then, and I got picked to lead the assault. We attacked with 12 men. We weren't carrying nothing but our arms, but even so, it was slow going over that wet, muddy ground, and the Germans had the approach covered. We weren't more than halfway across before most of us were face down in the mud with machine gun wounds, or else dead. The Germans had us pinned down on that dike all day, and it was only after dark they were able to get us out. Well, the upshot is, I get shipped back to England on account of the wounds in my leg. I'm lying on this litter in some field station waiting for an ambulance to carry me to the embarkation point, and I look over at the guy lying next to me, and it's Haywood. I haven't seen him since England, on account of he got sent to the stockade for lifting a jeep in London the night before we were to pull out. He's all happy to see me, and we get to talking about everything that's happened, and who got killed, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm only half listening as he's telling me about the stockade, and how the officers there are even worse than the ones in the outfit. All of a sudden, though, my ears perk up, because he's talking about McNair.
He was the worst, that McNair. Every time I saluted him, he used to hold up his hand and say, "How?" You know what he told me? He told me he knew my mother real good. Said he met her in a cat house in Saskatoon. He said she liked it so much he didn't even charge her usual $2. He said he might even look her up again after the war. Told me the next time I wrote her to send his regards. Him and his dog. But I fixed him. They never found that dog where I put him.
Well, he wasn't telling me anything new, because everyone knew who fixed McNair's dog. What he said next, though, gave me a feeling in my stomach like you get sometimes in an elevator. I turned to look at him, but he was staring straight up, and you could see he was somewhere else. You could hear the rage in his voice, and see it in the way he lay there with his hands clenched, and the muscles in his jaw working, and his breath coming hard and fast. I think he forgot that I was even there.
You want to know something? It was me that fixed McNair in England. You know what I fixed him with? His own dog's hide, that's what. Dog skin makes real nice leather. Real soft. He was having a piss and I just walked up behind him and slipped that little piece of his dog around his throat. He is flopping around and trying to fight back, and I told him how I killed his dog and said he should be happy because he's going to see him again in hell.
I spent about 6 weeks in London. The first couple of weeks in a hospital full of guys with every type of wound you could imagine. I had a lot of time to think about what Haywood had told me. I had no doubts at all that it was the truth. He really hated McNair. I was back with my outfit in Germany about 6 months later, when somebody brings in this newspaper piece about Haywood getting a posthumous military medal for conspicuous bravery in leading an attack on an enemy position that had his company pinned down and sustaining heavy losses. That started up all the old talk about McNair and his dog, and whether it was Haywood that did him in. I don't know why I never said anything about what he told me. It just didn't seem right. Anyhow, what good would it have done? Well, that's my officer's story. Don't get me wrong. There were plenty of officers that were pretty decent. But guys like McNair, I figure they got what they deserved.
Lay down your guns, the captain shouted, throw bayonets to the ground. Lay down your life for king and country, lay down your muskets and stand down. Lay down your guns, the captain shouted, throw bayonets to the ground. Lay down your life for king and country, lay down your muskets and stand down.
My unit was on a routine patrol, clearing the streets of fillets of snipers and booby traps. Me and this other guy, Joe Visna, were scouting out this building on the outskirts of the city. We knew the Germans were on the run. The front was steadily moving back as they retreated. Even so, we kept our guard up. I just finished checking the ground floor of what looked like a ruined factory when Joey yells at me.
Hey, Cuff! Get down here. We hit the jackpot. Yahoo!
I follows the sound of his voice to the cellar of the building. As I'm making my way down the stairs, Joey lights up a torch he's made out of old rags and a stick and places it in a big iron bracket on the wall.
Check this out, Cuff,
he says. He's standing beside this huge wine vat. Quick as catfish, we dig out our tin cups and put them under the spigot at the bottom of the vat. Joey cranks the handle, and thick red wine comes splashing into our cups and spilling out onto the floor. Joey tips his cup to me, and we both take a huge gulp.
Jesus,
he says, coughing.
This tastes like pickled piss.
I have to agree, but since it's all we got, we refill our cups and drink it down again. It still tastes terrible, like vinegar gone bad, but we're starting to get a glow on by now, and we go for another refill. Except this time there's just a trickle. Joey grabs the top of the vat and gives it a shake, and we can hear the wine sloshing inside. He tries the spigot again, but nothing comes out.
Must be something blocking it.
I climbs up the side of the vat and grabs the heavy wooden lid. I pulls it open, and this horrible stink hits me in the face. I calls to Joey to hand me the torch, and I holds it over the top of the vat. Inside is the bloated corpse of a German soldier. He must have thought the vat would make a good hiding place. I vomited out everything I drank until my stomach was empty. Then I kept on heaving. We got the hell out of there and never went back. To this day, I can't drink wine, especially red wine.
Fallen Eagle and Cuff are about the experiences of Aboriginal veterans who return to a world that has no place for them. Fallen Eagle tells the story of Tommy Prince, one of the best known of Canada's Aboriginal soldiers who fought in World War II in Korea. Tommy was decorated by 2 countries and recognized as a superlative soldier by his superior officers and his fellow soldiers. The respect and honor he won through his military exploits didn't count for much when he returned home to Manitoba, however. You're listening to a special Remembrance Day edition of Radio City on CBC Radio 1. The next song is called Fallen Eagle.
Tommy Prince was the son of chiefs. He grew up in a land where the railroad passed the rundown shacks of a little Soto band. He dreamed the same dream every night. He watched an eagle fly till it disappeared in the dying light of an endless blood-red sky. Where has all the glory gone? The hearts that sang, the eyes that shone, the memories of songs have songs still come to you in dreams. Where have all the heroes gone? Broken now that once were young. The restless dead still haunt your nights and call to you in dreams. The little reservation seems a million miles away from the battlefields where Tommy Prince once earned a soldier's pay. He came back home a hero with medals on his chest, and some say that of all of them, Tommy was the best. Where has all the glory gone? The hearts that sang, the eyes that shone, the memories of songs have songs still come to you in dreams. Where have all the heroes gone? Broken now that once were young. The rest is dead, still haunt your nights and call to you in dreams. Tommy Prince was a hero decorated by the king, but when his wars were over he found it didn't mean a thing. Yet Tommy was a soldier, he gave the war his all. He won his wings in battle, but eagles sometimes fall. In a Main Street bar he fought his final war, till Tommy finally found the peace that he was looking for. Yeah, he came back home a hero, but what are heroes for? Another broken promise, another casualty of war. Where has all the glory gone? The hearts that sang, the eyes that shone, the memories of songs have songs still come to you in dreams. Where have all the heroes gone? Broken now that once were young. The rest is dead, still haunt your nights and call to you in dreams. Where has all the glory gone? The hearts that sang, the eyes that shone, the memories of songs have songs still come to you in dreams. Where have all the heroes gone? Broken now that once were young. The rest is dead, still haunt your nights and call to you in dreams.
Cuff was an old guy who lived by himself in a little shack in Dogleg. Ever since I was a kid, I used to hang around Cuff's place. He was a trapper and he knew everything there was to know about muskrats and beaver and fox and lynx.
A fox is a curious animal, Billy.
He'd say.
If you ever want to shoot a fox, just whistle when you see one. That fox will stop every time to try to figure out what that sound means. When he does, you shoot him.
I tried it out myself, and it worked just like Cuff said it would. If I'd had a gun, and if I wanted to, I could have shot that fox easy as anything. I didn't want to, though. I just wanted to see if he'd stop. Cuff never had a wife or kids that I know of. He had a woman once that used to stay with him when he was still trapping. She was a big, soft thing named Jean. She drank quite a bit. I guess you had to stay with Cuff. He drank mostly home brew that he bought from a bootlegger instead. He used to offer me a glass when I got a little older. I tried it just once. I thought it was going to be sick, it smelled so bad, and it burned like fire all the way down my throat. After that, I just said no. Sometimes I'd bring over a case of beer, standard lager, Cuff's favorite. Jean was a nice woman when she was sober. She always treated me good. I couldn't visit without her asking me to stay for lunch or supper. One day I noticed Jean wasn't around anymore. I asked Cuff where she was. He said she'd gone for a case of beer 2 weeks before and never came back. I never heard him say a word about her again. Cuff passed on 2 winters ago. I stopped by for a visit one day to bring him some tobacco. It was a cold, clear February day. There were sundogs in the sky. Even the birds were laying low. The only sound was the crunch of the snow underfoot. For the first time ever, Cuff's old brown dog didn't come barking to meet me. Instead, he came crawling on his belly, making little low noises in his throat. There were no footprints in the yard. The old man hadn't been outside since the last snowfall over a week before. But what really worried me was that there was no smoke coming from the little tin chimney on the roof of Cuff's shack. I pushed open the door. "It's Billy, Cuff. I brought you some black cat," I called out to the old man. There was no answer. The little room was so cold I could see my breath. I knew what to expect when I made my way into the old man's tiny bedroom. Cuff was in bed looking like he was asleep, his eyes closed and his mouth slightly open. His false teeth were frozen in a glass of ice on the table by the bed. I called him again, but I didn't expect an answer, and I didn't get one. There was no family at the funeral. I didn't know of anyone. There were maybe half a dozen neighbors in the little churchyard. Cuff had left enough money to be buried, and I went to pick out a nice-looking wooden casket. 4 veterans from the Legion came. Cuff had fought in World War II. They had a little ceremony with a flag. They had a tape machine to play The Last Post, too, but it was so cold it wouldn't play.
And that concludes My Father's Bones, War and the Métis Tradition, written and performed by Ted Longbottom and Greg Pruden. All the songs you heard recorded were made especially for today's show. Technical work here in Winnipeg provided by Carrie Hanna and Joe Dudich. Thanks to you both. And that is pretty much it for our Remembrance Day version of Radio City this week. Radio City is broadcast out of Winnipeg and heard every Saturday between 5 and 6 p.m. If you have any comments about today's show, I'd love to hear them. My number in Winnipeg is 788-3715, or use the net Radio City at winnipeg.cbc.ca. Next Saturday on Radio City, St. Boniface troubadour Marcel Soulodra, recorded live at the West End. I'm your host, Doug Holmes. We'll talk to you then.